You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another interesting episode of Ask Drone U. As always, my name is Paul, and I've got a very special guest today, Mr. Trent Casi. Trent, welcome to the show.
This is great. Thank you, Paul. I'm very happy to be here. This is awesome. My first time on the show.
Yeah, and I doubt it'll be your last, too.
No, I'm looking forward to many more of these.
Definitely. So why is Trent here on the show? Well, we do have a special announcement about expanding our team here at Drone U to include Trent, because as many of you know, drone teams and programs have really struggled to get quote unquote off the ground. There's a lot to manage. There's a lot of nuances, and simply, developing pilots and the right systems is difficult, which is why we developed the props program. And Trent is going to be kind of steamrolling the props program to drone teams and departments, but we're not here to bore you with a bunch of corporate announcements. Rather, we learned something very, very, very useful in working with Trent. So before we get into exactly what we learned, help me understand, Trent, your background, because if I understand, you've got almost 20 years of experience in GIS. You've worked with Wingtra, PIX. What's your background?
Yeah, no, it's been over 20 years of that solutions kind of consultant role where I've been, very grateful. I've been exposed to the software, the data side of things, the hardware, all the whole workflow to help you get great geospatial data. So that's been my mission for these last 20 years, to help those customers out and make sure they're looking at the right technology. And, I got very excited when I started talking to Drone U about the props program, because I feel the industry really needs it. And that's something that I really want to push forward because, again, it's a great solution for these companies, large enterprise corporations that are looking to start up their drone programs. And Drone U's done an excellent job of creating this program. So I'm very excited to be working with these guys and moving the ball down the field and helping the industry out tremendously.
Well, we're grateful to have you because honestly, you add a tremendous amount of value with what you know in fixed wing drones, like the Wingtra drones. If you guys are not familiar with that, it is vertical takeoff and landing fixed wing drone, offers a full frame sensor. I mean, this is really mapping large areas at scale. In fact, I'm surprised more drone pilots haven't gone to Wingtra just because of the ease and simplicity of georeferencing data sets, but also in just how much area you can cover. It's amazing.
It is amazing. It's truly, it's game changing. If 10 years ago you told me that there's going to be some technology, a workflow out there, you could accomplish this on small to medium sites, I'd be so excited. I probably couldn't wait, for the next 10 years to come for this technology to be available. It truly is game changing though, especially on smaller to medium sized projects.
Yeah, totally. Because the most you could really map with a Phantom in a given day, no georeferencing, I would say would be 2,000 acres. Georeferencing, the most we've been able to do in a day was 400 acres or a large golf course. And the Wingtra drone does about 400 acres almost an hour, right?
That's correct, just on one flight. So when you think about a lot of the large fixed wing manned aircraft companies out there, 5-10 years ago, you'd have to call up, company A, hey, I got, 1,000 acres to go fly. And they would charge, a pretty hefty price tag to, ferry the aircraft out here, process the data, minimum sometimes is $25,000, $30,000. Where a technology like the Wingtra workflow, now you can actually go after those projects and be very cost effective and efficient and pretty much have your own aerial imaging program internally in your company, almost in your back pocket. So that to me is extremely exciting. You have something that the last 20 years that has really come about that's really, truly game changing.
Yeah, no, 100%. And thanks to you at our Props Mapper program, which is all of our mapping-based classes kind of in chronological order, we're adding this new fixed-wing drone section with the Wingtra, doing a Don't Crash course, and adding it to all the props programs. And honestly, flying with you with that Wingtra was really, really interesting, not just because of the ability to map so much, but also the quality. That full frame sensor, even at 400 feet, is getting what, like an inch GSD?
Roughly a centimeter and a half, actually GSD at 400 feet with the 42 megapixel. So,
which is stellar, because if you think about it, you're not even it's hard to really frame up in a succinct sentence, because it's literally a force multiplier, because you can fly higher, you can fly larger sites. And then the way that we do georeferencing with the Wingtra is so easy and so simple under the right circumstances, right?
Good workflow, yep.
That it's a force multiplier to just do way better data at scale.
That's correct. I mean, for example, we can't legally do this yet because FAA rules and everything else, but someday it's coming where Paul and I could go down to the city of Denver and probably map the whole city in a couple days with 2 Wingtras, where currently the way it's done is a fixed-wing manned aircraft, they may spend anywhere $200,000 to $300,000 a year to do that, where again, with a couple Wingtras, pay for the equipment under $60,000, that you go map a city a couple times a week potentially. And that's just, to me, it's still something that I'm comprehending, but it's very exciting times for sure.
For sure. And so what we also learned from Trent was the fact that to create the fastest orthomosaics would actually be done with the Wingtra because of its capabilities, right? I mean, it's insane. But here's the thing. Typically, to get those rapid orthomosaics, we would use something like Pix4D React, which if many of you are familiar with, you have actually no way of georeferencing that data whatsoever. There's nowhere to put GCPs in there. You can't do any of that. But with this proprietary system from Wingtra HUB, I think you have figured out the absolute fastest way to create georeference orthomosaics, because the georeferencing is done in Wingtra HUB and you don't even need GPS equipment to do it. So how exactly does that work?
Yeah, in a perfect setting, you can get access to the USGS CORS network to get after that RINEX data, as long as your base station is within 20 miles of that. But basically, do your geotagging with the RINEX data, and then you create these pretty accurate EXIF data, which you load into Pix4D React, and I call it decision-ready imagery. We just processed, about 35 acres in about 7 minutes. So and create a nice orthomosaic for to make those decisions off the imagery. Great solution for rapid response mapping. Severe weather, flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes. It's a great technology, which I feel hasn't quite been maximized, especially in that rapid response, emergency response areas. So I'm looking forward to pushing that ball down the field myself with Paul, and also just to get the word out there. It's a great combination of the technology to give you that decision-ready imagery.
Yeah, for disaster assessment and response, it's unbelievable because of just the sheer area that you can cover. And you don't need cellular data. You don't need to have a rover. You don't need to have arrow points. If you're within 20 miles, like you said, of a CORS tower, so not a tower or a GPS equipment that we have, but physical infrastructure. And so when we take that RINEX data, are we essentially taking that data from the tower and then Wingtra HUB is applying that information to the images?
That is correct. Basically taking that, XYZ information from the satellites and correcting the images that are coming off the Wingtra and making them more accurate, smarter. And basically it's an easy workflow to do that. A couple steps in Wingtra HUB and you have your EXIF, geotag, PPK ready data.
Yeah, I mean, literally in 20 minutes from landing, the flight took 7 minutes. Landing, 25 minutes later, everything was georeferenced, processed, and delivered. That's insanely fast.
Insanely fast, which is just, to me, it's still mind-boggling to think of this technology is here today to do this.
Yeah, and it's a really intelligent proprietary system too, because again, with React not being able to do georeferencing, you are essentially doing that to the images prior to even uploading into any photogrammetric software, which really, gosh, the efficiency, even if you were running it in, say, Mapper, the efficiency of not having to do all those ground control points and marking them and all that, I mean, you save probably at least 75% of the project time.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So it's creating this accurate data that's pretty easy workflow to use, and is coming out with a great, again, it's about, an accurate decision ready image, a map that you can basically give to first responders or the proper authorities to figure out, hey, what has this flood done to this area? Has this levee broke? Things like that.
So for people who are not kind of familiar with Wingtra, what does this drone typically cost? And I mean, we have already talked about it's a full frame sensor. So which camera is it using? And typically what's the expense of acquiring one of these birds?
Sure. So with the 42 megapixel camera, it's a great workhorse for creating orthomosaics, contours, elevation models. With the PPK module with the case, you're looking at about $33,000, so low 30s on this, which is actually a small amount of money for what it does.
Totally.
So, yeah, and that's the sensor I would recommend for that rapid response mapping. There's 4 other sensors as well too that give you access to multispectral data, oblique data, a little budget-oriented ortho camera as well. But that 42 megapixel really gives you that coverage and that efficiency that you need to create accurate data. So it's a great workflow, great technology. At a price that you'll get a return of investment on very quickly.
Well, yeah, because again, if you go back to the example of what you were saying with flying fixed wing aircraft versus doing these jobs with the Wingtra, I mean, you could literally charge half, let's just call it 10 grand for a particular project. And you're going to make the money back on the Wingtra really quickly because again, the force multiplier, the ability to do efficient georeferencing and the ability to map really large areas at a really high quality resolution.
That's correct, Paul. We were just talking a few minutes before this, we had a break, and the large aerial companies out there, they're doing their work, large city, counties, projects, large oil and gas. But, with inflation, maintenance costs, pilot costs, that a lot of those companies don't want to touch projects that are less than $50,000, which is great for drone service providers that have, for example, like a Wingtra, because there's a lot of projects out there that it's just not efficient anymore to do it with a fixed-winged manned aircraft. It's small enough. So with the Wingtra, several thousand acres, up to 10,000 acres potentially. That sweet spot. I've had customers, I had one customer do up to 20,000 acres with the Wingtra, which is pushing it for sure. But that sweet spot, total project, I would say anywhere from 10 to 12,000 acres is the top end for a Wingtra, which, that's a lot of data. And guess what? It's something you can fly on a weekly basis, that really is, if you're a drone service provider, that the Wingtra piece of technology is great for going after those projects. They're under $50,000 that the big fixed wing manned aircraft companies just aren't going after anymore. It just doesn't make sense for their bottom line to do it.
Yeah. And now you mentioned too that the Wingtra has multiple payloads, some of them being multispectral payloads. So for the layman's out there, essentially this drone could be great for agricultural operations as well. Trent, we had a student who was, his family had a bunch of rice farms, I believe in Arkansas. And you know who you are. You attended the Denver mapping class, I think back in 19. But that said, he was looking for a PPK solution to not only map, but acquire multispectral data. I told him, and this was years ago, I think the best drone for you would literally be the Wingtra. Because again, the lack of GCPs now, if you really want killer data, it is, best to have some sort of rover or an arrow point as some sort of, check, but you still can get really good data, again, if the environment is right, like you alluded to. But when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to these multispectral sensors, do you think that the Wingtra is one of the best solutions out there or a solution out there for ag?
Absolutely. I think the market, you read a lot of the marketing reports on agriculture. It's going to become multi-billions for drones. I think we just haven't seen the adoption of it yet. The technology is, the Wingtra with a great MicaSense camera, multi-spectral system on there is a great solution for agriculture. I think there's a little bit of a changing of the guard with agriculture groups that, younger generations are coming in with the technology where, the older generation was more concerned about paying off a piece of equipment where, a drone wasn't viewed as a tool that was maybe worth investing. But now, we have to feed the population and everything else with a lot of the extreme weather we have. It's ever more important to be very precise with your agriculture, fertilizing, irrigation, pests, things like that, where if you pair it up with a great multispectral sensor like a Red Edge and the Wingtra, and now the ability to do PPK geotagging makes that data, the relative accuracy even better, that you get really good results. So, the San Joaquin Valley, the big bread baskets of the United States, they're great tools, for example, to get an NDVI index calculation, look at the crop the health of your crops and your fields, where I think we're going to see this continually. Maybe it was slow going in the beginning, but I think we're rapidly going to see the adoption of technology like a Wingtra system with a multispectral sensor and processing that would say for the Pix4D fields. It's a tremendous combination. I think we're just going to see the need for that to ever grow.
Totally. And I think as we see more solutions for interpreting that data, I feel like that's the big hang up with a lot of ranchers and farmers. It's like, okay, this is great data, but how do I act on this data? Are we going to send another drone out that's going to go spray? Are we going to send people out to go look at an issue? I feel like there are still multiple steps that could be better solved. There are solutions right now, but I mean, imagine you're a rancher or farmer and you fly the Wingtra, you get your multispectral data, you've got your EO point cloud. And if you could throw all of that to your John Deere tractor and it takes everything, it conducts all the actions for you of plucking certain plants or, putting water in certain areas or maybe some sort of pesticides or fertilizer. I mean, having that end-to-end solution, I feel like, is when we will fully see the full adoption of drones in ag.
Absolutely. And that sums up, pretty much precision agriculture. It's ever important. It's very challenging with weather. I mentioned a couple minutes ago, where I truly believe that precision agriculture, this workflow, at the end of the day, it's giving us those correct answers. So at the end of the day, we love flying drones, the technology, and everything else, but it is what's paying the bills. Basically, are those answers, the correct answers, that correct workflow. So that's what we're after. And that's right there is the whole return of investment of this technology.
Totally.
So I think we'll ever see it improving as well too, some AI automation, things like that. I think you have to really look under the cover today, look at that information that's coming out of some of the software packages to, do some ground truthing on that. But I think that I'm excited for the future, with agriculture. So I talked to a lot of people in it. It's a little slower than your traditional uses for drones, but I think, the market out there is definitely ready for this technology.
Totally. Well, thanks to you, Trent, we're going to be adding the Wingtra into our Don't Crash course system, which will propagate to all the prop systems. We're going to be adding in a little bit about rapid orthomosaics for our rapid orthomosaic course, our disaster response props program. But at the end of the day, this, I think, really, really expands the offerings. And I have to say, to bring someone on board, so you are now the director of sales for Props Drone U. We've never had anyone work in sales at Drone U. It's always been organic, but with Props being more enterprise, you have to have more kind of relationships and touch points. My point is to bring someone on board who's a director of sales, who also has all the experience of mapping, and then can also teach additional content to help our clients. Like, dude, you really do have the whole package.
Oh. Well, thanks for that, Paul. I mean, when we first started the dialogue, I was very excited. I started researching and everything else, and I thought it was a great match for both groups to pretty much get together, because it's also too, I feel a need. There's a hole in the industry as far as, this can fill, that I think we really can, get this rocket ship off the ground, pun intended. So I'm pretty excited about working with you and the team and Rob and everything else. So I feel like my background can really be a help to you guys and vice versa. So I'm really excited to be working with these guys. And I think the sky's the limit for us.
Amen. The feeling is mutual, Trent. So that to be said, if you are in a drone program, a drone team, you're just getting started or refreshed, you've got to check out the props program. Reach out to Trent at thedroneu.com. Here's the other cool thing about bringing Trent on board. You need a Wingtra? Well, for the first time ever, Drone U through Trent is going to be supporting Wingtra sales.
Very excited about that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably do some good things in that arena as well too. So it's a great piece of technology. I fully believe in it. So I've been working with over 3 years with the hardware. So
That's awesome.
It's a great system. And I think paired up with Drone U, it's a great combination of all experience and tools and everything else.
No, totally agree. So one last question before we end. Where do you see the future of the industry? Like, just a general macro view, maybe what verticals you see growing the most? Like, what do you see?
Sure. So, I gravitate a little bit toward the energy space. I think energy is the economy, whether it be oil and gas, solar, wind. At the end of the day, all of our lives have been impacted by the, availability of cheap energy. Of course, things are very interesting now on the geopolitical stage, but I feel like with the drone technology, you will see more and more support for oil and gas, for solar, for more putting the infrastructure in as well for utilities. So I'm very excited to see, as especially when we talk about BB loss, beyond visual line of sight work, that's a natural progression. We aren't quite there yet, with some of the regulations, but it's going to come at some point. That ball is moving down the field, and I know there's a lot of frustration a little bit. It's not moving fast enough, but I think there's enough momentum there that truly these projects will become bigger. We'll see more just ability to fly systems, very autonomous as well too. And I think, the future is going to, hey, I just need to push a button and the system will go collect some data and give me the answers. But I see very exciting times for the energy space. Energy is the economy. I want to see the technology support that, whether it be quadcopters, fixed wing, whether they got LiDAR on them, photogrammetry. I'm just very excited to see what it does for the energy industry for sure. So.
Now, does your answer regarding the energy arena or vertical have anything to do with this new infrastructure bill that's being pushed by Congress?
Absolutely. I think there's going to be a big, we're already seeing it for, platforms to support inspection as well too, because the health of the assets, I think we saw, a couple of years ago when Texas had the big meltdown, there's 3 grids in the country. One of them's Texas, that a lot of people caught hell for, whatever. They weren't prepared for the cold weather, a lot of finger pointing, but that is good for the drone industry, I feel, because as you see, Congress now has put a bill through that's for spending money on the infrastructure. And that part of that is actually work for a lot of inspections, and that helps the drone industry.
It's like creating like an inventory of all the infrastructure prior to actually doing any potential work of like building the super grid or building new bridges.
That's correct. And I think, last 20, 30 years, 40 years in this country, there's been a neglect of infrastructure. And, we saw some of the, whether it be bridges, utilities, and we have to update this grid to support, some of the growth, the newer technologies, a lot of solar. How do you, the influx of solar when the sun's on, when it's not on? I think that's ever important. And that means, more robust grid, more robust infrastructure. And that means more areas that need inspected to maintain those grids. So that's ever going to be important. Like I said, it's been a lot of neglect the last 20, 40 years in this country. And I think it's just exciting for drone technology because they're the perfect tool for supporting that infrastructure.
Totally. And when it comes to solar, and we're seeing obviously a huge increase in solar, especially with like the Tesla superchargers and whatnot, of whom we've trained. But I think that the drone market and DSPs and enterprise companies have a huge opportunity with solar because, we've taught prop solar inspections using Raptor maps, acquiring autonomous information about which panels are broken, what is the actual cost of that on a monthly basis, what is the decrease in efficiency, and then on an annual basis, what is that costing the farm runner or owner or operator. And now though, with companies like Lucid Drone Technologies, like that sprayer drone we have over there, you can now literally, do all of the analysis and interpretation of, what's not working. And in solar, I found out that it only takes a year or two, especially in the Southwest, to lose up to 25% efficiency of the power output of those panels. So now pilots can interpret, showcase the problem, and then utilizing a system like Lucid Drone Technologies, go out and actually clean the panels. I mean, I feel like it's an end-to-end solution, and I bring this up because sometimes I think we don't know what we don't know about the future applications of drones.
I would agree. Yeah, if we had a crystal ball, we could really, be amazing. But I think it's always working with the customers and talking about the applications, which really gets me excited. Spend a couple hours and what are you actually doing? What do you think about this? So I'm always open ears because I don't have all the answers. I may only have a couple here and there, but at the end of the day, it's about listening to the customers and the applications. You know
what? I know I said that was going to be my last question, but you just brought up a really big point. One of the things that I think that you do so well is your ability to work with people and build those relationships. And when I asked you, like, what are your key methods of acquiring new clients in your previous jobs, your answer was really fascinating. And I feel like your ability to build those relationships is, in my opinion, like your key performance indicator for your capacity to genuinely not only just sell drones and training, but provide value. And I bring all this up because if you were a DSP, if you were a small business or a smaller drone team, what advice would you give to people to go out and drum up business? Because I really don't understand some of the dichotomy that's out there right now, where we've got DSPs saying they're having trouble getting business. And then we just had a huge company come to us and say, we need to hire 3,500 pilots, and not just these 107 operators. We need people who can actually get maps, photo, video, fly in close proximity. I mean, so what would you recommend to these pilots who are struggling to drum up business? What would you tell them to do?
I would have conversations with their potential prospects and be as human as possible. Since the pandemic, things have changed rapidly, I think, where we're yearning for that human connection to build emotionally. Not only, yes, you may have a business relationship, but I was just thinking the other day, a lot of my friends in life are from work or from customers at the end of the day, where I got to know folks really well and understand them, what were their emotional pain points with their technology, where you become that person they look at, you're going to help them.
Yeah.
So I think not just to sign a contract, get a deal, you get a commission check or whatever you're trying to do. We all have to put food on the table, but also too, I think it's very important you build that relationship where they look at you and say, this person really wants to help me out.
Yeah.
And that's a key there, which is just be yourself. Get to know their dog's name, get to know their other half's name, what they like to do. I mean, we're human. And I'm generally curious about human beings. We're very interesting creatures at the end of the day. What makes each person tick? Every person is different. They way what they want to be approached, but we all have this yearning to actually connect with somebody and say, hey, this person's just not trying to sell me a piece of technology. I actually want to help me. And they're not going to move on to the next account. That's the one advice I can give. Really get to know your customers. And the old thing, it says, business and personal stuff doesn't mix. I think that's kind of, for me, that's thrown out the door where, hey, I do want to go skiing with somebody. I still want to go snowboarding and get to know them even better, because in this industry, especially, we're all in this together, So
Totally.
And I want to see generally people, my customers, be successful with the technology and the workflows. That really gets me up every day.
Well, and you mentioned the personal work dichotomy in the creator economy. Now that's got out the window. Their work 100% of the time. What would you say is the best methodologies of discerning who the right potential clients may be, and then how best to have that initial connection or that initial interaction? Sure.
I think it starts with a lot of conversations that could be dead ends here and there. You may not be talking to the right person, but you figure out that pretty quickly. If you're going to a group that's never used mapping data or inspection data, that might be a longer road to travel before there's a relationships that's created to provide an answer or a solution to the technology. But established groups that you go after, utilities, oil and gas that need inspections, need mapping data, those are prime targets. There's a number of tools out there. I use Apollo.io a lot to look at UAS program managers for maybe the state of Texas or the Dallas area. I'm just throwing an area out there. And then you take that information of those 10 people in that area, then you do research maybe on LinkedIn. And you find out, okay, is this person ever did even know what mapping data is? Do they know what a point cloud data is? They know certain file formats that, if you're it's okay to start from scratch. I've had work with customers say, hey, we're trying to do this. Do you think drones could help us? And you recommend a platform, you recommend, the software and how to process it. So I think it's just, it's a lot of wood to chop. You just can't jump in there. You got to stay in there and, have as many conversations as possible. And to be honest, it's a solutions consultant role, but it's mentally draining, and just be prepared for that where, you may not have instantaneous success, but I always say sales are like campfires. You got to continually put logs on them all. Some of them go out, some of them become bonfires. But if you're continually tending to those, the customers see that this person is genuinely interested in my success. And maybe they're ready 12 months from now. Hey, you know what? I got authorization to spend $100,000 on drone technology. How would you spend it? Mm-hmm. So I have a guy the other day that just said to me that we had a nice long conference call in the Texas area that said, hey, our CEO just basically gave me a blank check and here's what we're trying to do. Can you come down in January to talk about, power line inspections, mapping of corridors. And of course, I'm going to come down with a variety of systems as well. Talk about training with Drone U. And that to me was very exciting. He said, you know what? Okay, this looks great. You seem knowledgeable. Do as much research as you can on the industries. Don't go in, somebody doesn't want to be talk to a person if you're one down. If you know less than them or not same as them, why would they want to talk to you? Make sure you know your customers, make sure you know the technology, and make sure what problems you're trying to solve. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and to that point really quick, one of the things I think to provide a visual to that point is if you were to have an initial meeting with someone and you've looked them up on LinkedIn, you did a little social creeping, as we call it.
Yes.
But when they bring up
we all do it.
Yeah, right. When we do that research and someone brings up a particular subject and you know what they're talking about because you took the time to go look at what they're involved in, you get that instant rapport, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
And I feel like that's reason enough to really do your research.
That's correct. You got to build credit for yourself. And, let's say you're working with utilities. I just recently brought 3 books on updating the U.S. infrastructure for the grid. It's, maybe at 9:00 at night. It's, not the most exciting reading, but you get into it and you start connecting the dots where then, you actually come up with ideas. You come, hey, with this, because that person's an expert in the infrastructure grid for their area potentially, but also too, they're not an expert in what drone technology is out there. So it's your job to connect those dots, and you can't do it any better, unless you really know their business, their pain points. That may mean sitting in their office for 6 hours and collecting a bunch of notes, which I've done. And then when you talk to the next customer, wow, this person's actually in this industry. They know what they're talking about. They seriously want to help because that's how you help them connect the dots. You're the expert in the drone technology. They're the expert in the U.S. utility grid and the way things are inspected and updated. So you need to be that person that's going to connect the dots for them. But read as much as you can, try to become an expert just like them in that area, which you may spend a lifetime trying to learn what they know, but at least you're able to connect with the drone technology that, so make sure you know your platforms, your software, the data side, what you can do with that data as much as possible. And that takes some time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. And so like this process of building relationships, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, relationships are the economy at the end of the day. So it's a relationship economy where you want to be that trusted person. Because if you sell somebody a piece of technology that you knew in your heart that wasn't the right match, but hey, I'm almost at quota. Well, of course, you're never going to sell that company again. And they're going to have, when they're out at the social, they're going to say, hey, let's not talk to Trent and Paul again because, they sold us something we didn't need. I'm never going to provide a solution for something you don't need. So for me, I'm going to look out for that customer. Now, if it's not the right solution and what I'm offering, I'm going to tell them, maybe we can't put that together for you. But at least here at this group, we have a lot of access to a lot of different solutions that we can sit down and say, hey, we have the training piece, we have the hardware, we have the software, and it's a nice, grouping of offerings that truly we can really help the industry.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think one of the things I really like and respect about you is integrity and, the high ethical kind of, moral stance that you have regarding sales and doing it right. And if it's not the right solution, I'm moving on. It's fine.
Yep.
Have you found that in having that type of attitude and implementing it, that you've had clients that maybe you didn't initially sell, but then came back to you because they simply trusted you to make the right decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. There were, customers that, had older technology and we said maybe we should change it out, things like that. But, I was always available to them. You don't always call somebody to potentially get a sale that day. It's learning about them, trying to figure out their pain points, and also, God gave you 2 ears and one mouth. Listen to what they're saying and collect as much information that they want to be able to trust you. So, I mean, your word is everything at the end of the day, because if you're in the industry and they find out, if you've sold some shady deals or I don't want to say shady, it's not the right technology for that, then of course you're not going to sell that account ever again. You'll get a bad name for yourself. So it truly is, the customer views that you're helping them out, that you truly care about them, which I don't see any other way to do it. And I think you're very passionate. You have the same kind of mindset as me too, to help the customers out. I mean, you'll be successful.
Yeah, 100%. In all honesty, I think, driving the value home, listening a lot. I feel like in today's society, we just listen to respond. We don't actually listen to understand.
That's a great quote.
I'm guilty of that too. You know me, I sometimes just spout off stuff really quick. So, but Trent, I'm really grateful to have you on this team. Really grateful to see, what you're doing already and what's to come. And I think your experience in this particular industry is so valuable too, because how many drones, equipment, how many things have come out where the marketing says one thing and the reality is totally different.
Yep.
Having that experience is invaluable.
Yeah, and I think that, I've worked for hardware manufacturers and there's these published specifications, but, you don't really, you got to apply it to the real world, So I think, you've been a voice of that as well, too. You say, all right, well, let's actually test it. Maybe we push the boundaries of it, actually you can get this, so it just makes me think of like the new Top Gun movie, they wanted to test the, integrity of the airframe. Well, it can actually do this, So you got to look at the manufacturer and say, okay, let's look at those specs, but actually look at what it actually does in the real world. And that's really important. I think at Drone U, that's something you guys have always done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. No, it's really important for me. And maybe Top Gun will have another sequel when the B-21 Stealth Raider comes out on Friday.
That is right.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, what would you think about selling an aircraft that costs $2 billion?
There you go. I always said my dream sales job was working for an aviation manufacturer. So, the Boeings, Airbuses, I think that'd be great. But you only have so many sales targets for that. You only have a handful.
But how many clients do you need on a commission of $2 billion?
That is correct. Just one, right? Sure.
Well, Trent, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think a lot of people have a lot to learn from you. I've been learning from you. I've been really enjoying it too, because I think what you'll find with Trent is, he's helping drone teams and programs get the right training, like the utilities in Texas. I feel like we're so prepared for that because we've been working in New York State and doing all their power line stuff. And so that's exciting. But what's also exciting is the way that you work with people. You're very forgiving. You're very mellow. You're very chill. When I think of like a classy Denver, suave, I don't know how to say this, just like a business guy, like you're what comes to mind, because Denver is like the epitome of working hard, but we also chill hard too. Like we understand balance,
Absolutely. I think it is balance. You work hard. There's no 9 to 5 work day anymore. So at the end of the day, you have dogs, kids, another half that you have commitments to, but maybe at 9 o'clock at night, you're actually still helping the customer, where that's just the nature of the world. And, as you see, since the pandemic, offices have kind of gone poof. We still have offices, of course, but I think it's something that, yes, you have to work hard, play hard, make sure you maintain your health, exercise, eat well. That's ever important to me as well, where at the end of the day, it helps you support those customers. So, and it keeps everything real and fresh.
Totally. And what I've been learning too recently is how exercise is the fuel for everything else. Like your energy, your ability to work with people, your patience, your emotional intelligence. Like, holy cow, I don't think I ever gave exercise enough credit. And that's just a personal learning experience.
Yeah, it's something that we've all been there. We burned ourselves out, where you truly need, I'm exhausted. I need to take a break and recharge myself, because everything's going to be there tomorrow as well. And just, maintain that, because if you're not maintaining that energy level, you're everything around you will suffer, including the customers. But yeah, I'm very excited about this opportunity to work with you and the team. I think, you guys have a great reputation. So, and I like how analytical you are. You look at certain things. Hey, what about this way? Well, I didn't think about it that way. So I'm really excited about learning from you as well, too.
Well, thanks, Trent. That means a lot, man.
Yep.
And I'm excited, too, because I know you're going to help a lot of people and help further perpetuate that reputation of integrity. That's really why I wanted to work with you. And you had some of the highest recommendations I've literally ever heard. I've never heard so many people be like, Trent Casi, oh yeah, you want to work with him. So that was great.
That's good to hear. That's just, good old fashioned sales work and working hard.
Totally. Well, Trent, thanks again for joining us. And thank you to all of you for joining us as well. You can reach out to Trent at the Drone U. And sir, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a great session.
Definitely. Well, that's going to do it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again for joining us. If you have a question, ask droneu.com. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.